Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good evening, everyone. Dhamma Q&A session series day 3. In today's topic, we're going to be discussing an interesting, also a very sensitive topic. As the title suggests, today's topic is going to be third precept. We've been talking up to first precept and second precept, and today we'll be discussing about some of the questions I received about the third precept. The third precept goes by Kamesu Michachara Viramani Sikkhapadang Samadhyami. Kamesu means sensual pleasures. Michachara is misbehaving. So misbehaving in sensual pleasures, and Viramani is that refraining. Sikkhapada means Sikkha is a disciplinary thing, and Padang is a rule. So you take the precept of refraining from, refraining from misbehaving in sensual pleasures. Okay, so let's get started. Now, the first question that I wanted to discuss with you is, okay, so in English we know this is more about adultery, but we don't see that really clear in most of the suttas, but we understand that some of the suttas, they are really reflective about calling this to be adultery. If you go to commentaries, like commentaries compiled by Buddhaghosa, he particularly notes that Kamesamichachara means adultery. So he has no other words to call it. And if someone wants to keep the precept, the third precept, according to his Buddhaghosa's interpretation, that is none other than refraining from adultery. But when you say Kamesamichachara, on one hand, Kamesu, it's not just one karma, because there are multiple karmas. It cannot be one karma. It cannot be just the physical kind of stuff. It cannot be just the adultery. So we have to take a look at this thing in detail, information. Let's take a look at the basic things about the Kamesu Michachara, the third precept. Now we find a sutta called Patama Niraya Sagga Sutta, Anguttara Nikaya 10.211. Anguttara Nikaya 10.211. In this sutta, we find a quote about what Kamesu Michachara is. Let's take a look. Kamesu Michachari hoti yata matu rakkita, pitu rakkita, mata pitu rakkita, bhatu rakkita, bagini rakkita, jnati rakkita, gotta rakkita, dhamma rakkita, sasamika, saparidanda, antemasu, mala gula parikkitapi, tatha rupasu charitang apajjita hoti. Now these are the kind of, especially this is given in the tone of, in the perspective of a man, these are the women that a man should not expect to be in a physical connection. Now I had to tell you, now in normal society, generally speaking, A marriage is not just a physical connection. A marriage, according to our understanding, not just from the textual sources, but also from this overall understanding about society, marriage is both a physical connection and an emotional connection. So if you want to carry a healthy marriage, you should have the both. Not just to maintain a physical connection, but also maintain emotional connection. I would say physical relationship and emotional relationship. Even though you are maintaining physical relationship, but you are not working towards the emotional relationship, things can go haywire. That's the place where people can get into. People who find that lacuna, that desideratum, that what you call empty place. They're looking for somebody to fill that empty thing. So you have to keep in mind, as lay people, you have to maintain the both physical relationship as well as emotional relationship to care emotions of your girlfriend, partner, and spouse. So now this sutta was given in a sense that men are listening to the talk given by the Buddha. The Buddha says you should not have a physical and an emotional relationship with a woman like this. Who are they? Maturakita. Let me read the translation so that it may make clear to you. He engages in sexual misconduct, I would say adultery. He has sexual relations with women who are protected by their mother, which means Matu Rakita. So if somebody is going to have a connection with a woman who is protected by mother and father, Piturakita. If someone wants to seek a woman who is protected by father, Mata Piturakita, a woman who is protected by the both parents, father and mother. But Baturakita, a woman who is protected by a brother. Bagini Rakita, a woman who is protected by a sister, another sister in the same family. Nyati Rakita, a woman who is protected by her relatives. Gotta Rakita, a woman who is protected by her lineage. Right? Dhammarakita. Who is Dhammarakita? A woman who is protected by Dhammano. A woman who has made a vow of celibacy. That means a monk or a nun. I would take the both sides. If a man is seeking a physical relationship with a woman who already became a nun, who already made the vow of celibacy, this is called a woman protected by the Dhammarakita. Sasamika, a woman who is already married. Saparidanda, a woman who is undergoing some legal, punishment according to the due process, jurisprudence. Antamasu Mala Gula Parikita, a woman who is already engaged to another man. So if a man seeks this kind of a woman for a physical relationship, that is called adultery. I would say, I can also call it infidelity. So adultery. So basically, according to Patama Niraya Sagga Sutta Anguttara Nikaya 10.211, it clearly says that Kamisumichachara has a broader meaning, but it specifically means about adultery or infidelity, which has other forms of adultery. We'll be looking at them too. So here we have a question. The Buddha says one has to refrain from adultery, both men and women. At the same time, let me quote another sutta. Michachari Sutta, Anguttara Nikaya 4.266. If you want to practice or keep the third precept really well, really good, you have to practice this third precept this way. Attana cha kamesu michachari hoti. One has to refrain from adultery. Parancha kamesu michachari samadhipi. If you can, if it is suitable, if it seems to be okay, that if you can advise, if you can make a connection to somebody, I mean, as a friend, you can tell, hey, look, this is not good. If you can sort of establish other people in, keeping the precept, kamesu michachareta samanunyo hoti. Kamesu michacharasya vannang bhasati. If you can approve, if you can at the same time make speak good about refraining from this third precept, that is how you're going to practice the third precept really well. That is under Anguttara Nikaya 4.266. But dumb folks, as I told you at the beginning, third precept has a bigger meaning. It's not just the adultery. Let's take a look. Kamesu michachara veramani sikkapadan samadhiya. I undertake the training precept to abstain or refrain from misconduct concerning sense pleasures. That's a good one. I mean, not just saying this is adultery. I mean, adultery could be one of the ways that one breaks the precept. But there are many other ways. What about eating? If you are a person who is not eating in moderation, if you are someone who has no rest, with your eyes, if you have no rest with your ears, if you have no rest, if you have no calmness, no serenity, no composure with your senses, that is also a breach of this third precept. Even though it is not given in that context, but we can apply those elements into third precept as well. Although the bigger meaning, I mean, that manifest meaning is about adultery. Now, for example, for those, I mean, including all of us, we might sometimes overeat, which is a pretty bad thing. I mean, we are breaching the kamesu michachara in a way, but it is not textually bad. I mean, according to the third precept. But we can apply because we are misusing at that point. Right? So any breach, any breaking of, senses, sensual pleasures can be labeled as breaking the third precept. So why don't we put this into this way? A false or wrong action arising out of desire. So we all have desires, but the problem is if there is something wrong or false arising from our desire, then that could be a problem. So somebody asking a question, I can get into that later, but don't worry about it. Huh? Can kamesu michachara also refer to don't abuse? Yeah, true. That's what I've been talking. It's not just the adultery. I will, explain more about that, after the regular question that I got. So, any breach of your senses, sensual pleasures, could be called as a breach of the third precept. Although the adultery is the biggest thing, but any breach, any misuse of your senses could be called as the breach of third precept. Now, what are the other things that we can look at about adultery, kind of like that kind of stuff? We have adultery, rape, incest, pederasty, and prostitution. So all these are part of adultery or infidelity. What is adultery? Voluntary sexual intercourse between a married person and a person who is not his or her spouse. That is what we call adultery. Rape. Now, rape has a bigger meaning. I mean, the normal society. Sexual intercourse carried out forcibly, forceful sexual intercourse, or under threat. You are making some threats to get the person into you for that, or of injury against a person's will, telling that person that I'm going to do this if you don't, say yes to me, or with a person who is beneath a certain age, under, having sexual intercourse with the, underage person, or incapable of valid consent because of mental illness, mental deficiency, intoxication, unconsciousness, or deception. This is a very interesting point. Now, I will get into a question somebody asked. Somebody asked a question: what if I was drunk and I was not into that, but I was drunk. Somebody made me drunk. I was intoxicated and I was into that. So then how would I see it? Did I break the precept? Third precept. We'll get into that later. But you have to keep in mind, because Buddhism is mainly talking about your mind, not just a physical action. We have a number of occasions in the Vinaya, in other places, where people broke the third precept literally, on the literal sense, but not mentally. That's why I told you, even the Sotapanna person can break the precepts. But they are not willing to break. But there may be some circumstances where Sotapanna person may break under certain circumstances, but they won't break six main, those main bad things, like killing parents and wounding the Buddha, killing arahants, making conflicts among the monks, nuns, and believing other, precept about salvation, what do you call, liberation. So the rape has a lot of forms of, that are connected to adultery. So what do you call, forceful action, not getting the consent, underage, mental issues, right? But if that happens, we also call it a form of the breach of the third precept. Incest. Human sexual activity between family members or close relatives, which is not, approved in, in third precept. Pederasty. A man who has illegal sex with a young boy. This can happen. People like this. So that is a problem too. It's a form of adultery. Prostitution, the act or practice of engaging in sexual intercourse for money. Definitely. Now I'm talking from the textual point. The folks don't get offensive, because I'm talking from a textual point. I'm not talking about valid reasons why this happens, why this will happen. There may be reasons, social reasons, but I'm not talking such things. I'm talking primarily from the textual point. So bear with me, because I'm trying to find out the textual point of view about the third precept. However, there's a problem. However, in order for this precept to be violated, there must be desire, an object of desire, an action related to the foregoing, and some harm. So these things, multiple reasons, must be present. The latter point is crucial. The precept does not imply that merely violating a social custom or convention is sufficient, unless, of course, it results in some discernible harm. Now, let's take a look at the elements of how someone breaks the third precept, and we will find out how exactly someone breaks the third precept. So, just because someone does something that is antisocial, right? You can't call it there is a breach of the third precept because it has to involve with your mind and consciousness. We'll see. The harm must be real, not merely a conceit to rationalize an underlying prejudice, and it must be intrinsic to the action. There must have harmed, uh, you know, done by somebody to someone. For example, a sensual action which may result in harm but does not necessarily and inherently do so would not violate this precept except in the specific case where it results in some harm. Okay. Now, I mean, we are not encouraging that somebody can do, but it is okay because there was no harm. We can't say that. We have to discourage all forms of adultery, which I mentioned to you. But if you take a look at of each specific case, simply because that happened, you can't say this there was a breach. It has to look at from different, multiple factors: harm, person, everything, consciousness. Okay. Moreover, it does not imply that an action originating in desire is intrinsically and necessarily harmful. Otherwise, the qualification miccha would be unnecessary. Now, number folks, Kamesu Michachara Veramani. Why Michachara? That means there is a certain healthy physical relationship that can be maintained by a couple. I would say Sammachara. Kamesu Sammachara. Right? But why Kamesu Michachara? The problem is Michachara. Micha is the misuse. You can, as lay people, you can, be with, you can, what do you call, stick to karma. But if you misuse your karma, that is the problem. The moderation and where you should lie, all that, they are specific to you. But we have to understand, if all karmas, sensual pleasures are wrong, then Buddha, never encouraged this as being michachara. So the misuse is a problem, not the sensual desire. Sensual desires will be a problem to attain in Nibbana. That's true. But in order for you to live a life, that's why Buddha says, in one reference I remember, try to be celibate. But if you can be celibate, then just follow the third precept. At least you don't do harm to other people, right? So you are having your own karmas in a very legal, healthy way. So the word called micha is very interesting because micha means misuse of karmas. Otherwise, the qualification micha would be unnecessary. Indeed, the very presence of the qualifier implies that there are actions arising out of desire that are not harmful, which don't violate the third precept. So there are certain actions that can arise out of desire, karmas, but they may never harm. They may never, attempt to misuse those karmas. So it's okay as a layperson. Therefore, it is a mistake to interpret the third precept so as to prohibit all sensual activity. So you can interpret the third precept to say that all sensual activities should be prohibited. You can say. So the precise meaning of the third precept is you can still enjoy your karmas, but don't misuse your karmas. That is the meaning, right? The harm can come in the form of both physical and psychological. That's why I was telling you, people who cheat others, we'll be getting to that later, their issues are mainly revolving around about the emotional relationship with each other, right? Physically, they are okay, but emotionally, they are not, keeping a good connection each other. So you have to keep both the physical and the emotional relationship each other if you are in a marriage or a relationship. Moreover, we must always remember that what is important in Buddhism generally is the intent, not the action. Don't take it, in a wrong way, because you might say, "Oh, I didn't expect, I didn't think this happened." No, but in the final analysis, when you look at something, a bad thing that happened, we're gonna look at the intention, right? You're gonna look at the intention. If someone had done a wrong thing, uh, consciously, with knowing that this is a bad thing, even in the law, legal matters, that person will be reprimanded with a lot of, uh, punishments. In the same way, if you knew that this is going to, harm this particular person, then it's a big problem. But if you didn't know, and there's a different way of looking at it, because you were not intentional about the particular bad thing. So we are primarily looking at the intention of everyone who is making any bad thing, even the good thing, right? I mean, if you flip the other side of the coin, if you do a good thing, but if you are not very intentional about that good thing, you will not get enough adequate punya. That's why Buddha says, even you do a lot of dana and all that physically, but if you are not really intentional, what I'm doing and what will happen, what I should have, involved with, what I should have been with in my mind, it will give you some results, vipakas effects, but not so insofar as what you should have done, right? So the same way, we look at the intention of uh, every precept, including the third precept. Ethical precepts in Buddhism are merely guidelines, not moral absolutes. Now, this is a place, Dhamma folks, you might be very confused. Now, let's take a look at what are the main fetters a person who becomes a Sotapanna uh, is eliminating. Sakkaya Ditti, Vichikicca, Silabbata Paramasa. Silabbata Paramasa. Now, even though you take and keep your precept, don't make your precepts to a point where you encourage them as being moral absolutes. Because Buddhism, the ethical perspective of Buddhism is mainly about, bringing you to the wisdom, and do not, what do you call, stagnate with the precepts. Some people, they are only looking at the literal presentation of the manifestation of the precept, which might stagnate them in the long run. So it is intention, not action. But don't think that action is not important. Action is important. That is what we can see. But ethically speaking, intention is the most important thing, because we know intention is what creates karma. Once again, one can create a false rationalization that an intention is virtuous when it is not. That will violate precept against lying. For example, it is the real intention, not the made up excuse, the free pass, that is karmically significant. Now, intention factor shouldn't be taken as or considered as a free pass to do bad things. So you have to keep to your mind that when we look at every precept and the influence of the impact of the precept, we have to always look at the mental, intentional part of the person. But still, actions make a big deal, right? But karmically speaking, we have to take a look at of the what do you call, the mental part. I was kind of like looking at, giving some background details about the precept. Okay, here we come to the interesting part of the elements. Now, how does someone break the third precept? There should be four elements, in tandem. That's when someone breaks the third precept. Number one, there must be now we talk about sensual desires, but when you talk about the third precept, it's primarily about adultery. So with that in mind, let's take a look. Number one, there must be a man or woman with whom it is improper to have sexual intercourse. Now, this is what we've been talking, Maturakita, Piturakita, all those type of women or men. I'm kind of like now we had to look at everything from a gender friendly perspective, right? Not like only talking about men, but also we talk about the women, the both side. Number two, there must be intention to have sexual intercourse with such a person. So intention factor. Number three, action must be taken to have such an intercourse. The action, not just the thought. Number four, there must be enjoyment from contact of the sexual, also there must be enjoyment of the both people, right? So if these four elements are present, that means there is definitely a breach of the precept. Okay. Next question, I would say, let's give it this way. Why do we have to practice the third precept? A very good question. We have to practice. I would say we need to practice, not we have to. We need to practice because we should not take any of these ethical measures in the form of how, should. We need to because we're really concerned about other people, right? You never like your girlfriend, your boyfriend to be taken by another guy, another woman, right? So, I mean, that's kind of a golden rule. So why don't you look at yourself, put you in that shoe, right? So why do we have to practice the third precept? We need to practice the third precept because we should have a moderation of our sensual pleasures. That's one thing. Number two, we should not harm other people, because if you are trying to have a connection with somebody like that, you are harming that person's family. Also, you are trying to steal, you are trying to break the second precept too. So there are multiple reasons that are relevant to why we need to practice. If you are not married, then think about other sensual pleasures. So we need to have a balanced, healthy practice of our sensual enjoyments or pleasures. Are there any connections between practicing third precept and responsibility? Yes, because all the precepts are responsibilities, right? When I say I don't kill, that means I am responsible for other people. I'm going to be responsible for other people. Those people who try to harm other people by doing a lot of bad things, they are not responsible for other people. They are not. So that's why when I teach students, kids about karma, I am telling them why we need to study karma. It is because you're going to be responsible. Whatever you do, whatever you act, whatever you think, you are responsible for every action, every speech, every thought. Then there will be a very peaceful environment and a country and a world that will appear, that will flourish with my that practice. So that means when you keep precept, it's not because you are going to nibbana. Most importantly, it's that you want to care other people. You are responsible for other people. You are taking care of yourself so that others will be happy, others will be peaceful, the whole world will be peaceful. So there's a huge connection between any precept and responsibility. But in particular, third precept is where you are responsible for your family, for taking care of others' families, for respecting others' families, right? For I would say showing what you call respect, honor, uh, you know, uh, to other families. So it's highly connected to responsibility. Somebody asked a question, what is responsible sex? Okay. Okay, it's a good question. Now, we know in Buddhist teachings that Buddha asks us to practice, especially you are a lay person. The person is coming from a lay person. I mean, the question is coming from a lay person. So you all are supposed to, you know, choose your physical relationships according to the third precept. If you want to stay single, uh, you can be single. But if you want to become a person who's into a marital affair, then you're going to make that happen. So if you really take care of your man, if you really take care of your woman with so much love, so much respect, that is responsible sex. But you have to, at the same time, maintain the emotional relationship as well, right? Don't forget that the connection is there only just to uh, be with that person physically. Think about the emotional side of the both. That's where a lot of marriages, are at risk, right? So try to balance out the both. So that's why the Buddha says, even though there is dukkha, when you are a lay person, you have to deal with your daily chores. You have to be with people. You have to take care of your husband. You have to take care of your spouse, take care of your wife. Even though they are called dukkha in the ultimate sense, but still you are happy with them, right? We cannot neglect that, right? So karmas definitely have a pleasure. But the problem is karmas don't give you eternal pleasure. That is where we say that being a celibate person is much better. So don't think that uh, you know what you call using or enjoying sensual pleasures is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. But if you know the limit, if you know how healthy you can do that, it's okay. So the problem is if you are really serious about attaining nibbana seriously, that's a different context. Like monks, nuns, they are going on a different path. So being celibate will make them easier to speed up their path in order to attain nibbana. But for you it's not a problem unless you keep your both physical and emotional relationships healthy. Do you agree with the view? The person says it's a widespread Buddhist view that sex is always a result of unskillful mental activity rooted in greed. If so, how is it best to respond to this, though practicing celibacy through the institution of marriage, or by just trying to avoid the most obvious forms of sexual misconduct? Okay. Well, I understand there's definitely forms of greed when it comes to sexual activities, but uh, okay, I cannot say that there is greed all the time. There would be karma because karma can be a greed. There are people who enjoy karmas but not take karmas into a greedy level. So this question, I have a counter question to this question. So I don't think all the sexual relationships can be taken into the greed, because there are people who maintain their physical relationships in a way that they are not into greed, but still they are karmas. They know that one day they have to go away, right? One day this is something that they don't find comfortable in terms of spirituality. So I can say all these relationships are greed based, but there are definitely who are fundamentally looking at sexual activity in the form of greed. Well, if you are a lay person, I don't think that celibacy might work, because you don't need to jeopardize your relationship, right? If you want to practice celibacy, become a monk, become a nun. Otherwise, don't jeopardize your wife life or husband's life. So be a responsible man, be a responsible woman. If you want to become a monk or nun, just become a monk or nun, but don't jeopardize your lay life. There are people like that. So I'm advising you, suggesting you, if you are in a relationship, marriage, fulfill your customs towards your spouse, take care of your spouse really good, uh, do your duties and responsibilities. But one day, if you want to become a monk or nun, just go ahead. That's a different way. But while being a lay person, you're gonna practice celibacy. That could be a big problem. Other than you're taking some precepts on a a day, take 8 precepts. You are practicing, celibacy for some hours, so few hours. What are the main unskillful elements with the third precept? Okay, if someone breaks the third precept in the form of adultery, definitely there is lobha, right? And stealing, called adinadana, and you are harming the other person who already into a relationship. So there are multiple unskillful elements that are associated with the breach of the third precept. What is the relationship of consent to third precept? It's a very good question. Now, even you are married, you cannot uh, force your spouse, your person, your partner, right? Because we always have to get the consent, because the consent is a big thing, because we are not trying to force someone into any physical or emotional activity that we want to be with. So always just look at whether they are consented or not. A disciple of the Buddha does not misuse sexuality. That means lay people, but rather cultivates and encourages honest and caring relationships. How do you view this? Yeah, I'm for that, because I I certainly believe that lay people should enjoy their life without too much bothering their life. By bringing all these deep teachings into the lay life, they have to keep they have to keep a balance, so that they know that this is their physical activity, this is their emotional activity. At the same time, they understand we should have a limit. At the same time, we are practicing our spiritual path. So all should have some boundaries, parameters. But some people don't have parameters, boundaries for all these activities, physical, emotional, and spiritual activities. We have to have a balance, so that that kind of relationship is going to be very healthy. Why do we need to talk about sexuality with the third precept? Very good question. Now, even though we talk about good people in societies, east and the west, everywhere in the world, but there are people who are trying to misuse other people in the form of sexuality. So, the more we don't talk about this open mindedly, with some limits, we don't want to talk about everything because it's on my role, right? Uh, but even on a spiritual note, the more we don't talk about this open-mindedly, the more opportunities a rapist, a bad person will have. That's why uh, we have to spread the message across. So we have to make people make people understand that there is a precept, the third precept, which is not just the adultery. There are multiple forms of adultery. One can, you know, uh, one can break this adultery based precept based on different ways. I would say again, you know, adultery, rape, incest, pederasty, prostitution, and all those activities. So if we know, if people know that these are forms, I mean textually what we understand, these are forms of adultery, at least they understand before they become adults. At least they understand this is wrong, this is not good for us, this is not healthy for us. That's what we want. If we don't talk about it, if we are not vocal about it, So people don't know, and people will still be harmed by those bad people. At the same time, they will be victims forever, and there is a higher chance of being victimized, right? So that's why it's good to talk about the third precept in the form of this adultery and the rest of the things. So, what are the forms of misusing sexuality? Now, this is when we understand adultery and the misuse sexuality and its connection towards the third precept. Visual conduct, layering, making sexual gestures, displaying of sexually suggestive objects, so pictures, cartoons, or posters. So these are ways of trying to do a bad thing in the form of misuse sexuality. What about verbal conduct, making or using derogatory comments, epithets, slurs, and jokes, verbal abuse of a sexual nature, graphic and verbal commentaries about an individual's body, sexually degrading words used to describe an individual. So, I mean, all these come from a background to, encourage misuse sexuality. So that, which is very bad. If people are if people becoming victims through someone's derogatory activities like this, definitely there's a high chance of being victimized by those individuals. So we have to really, uh, you know, uh, be aware of the situation. Physical conduct, touching, assault, impeding or blocking movements, offering employment benefits in exchange for sexual favors, making or threatening retaliatory action after receiving a negative response to sexual advance. So all these things can happen. Still, they can happen, in different situations, different institutions. So that's why we had to understand that these things exist, uh, can exist at different levels. So we have to make people aware. You got to be careful, because not because they can harm you physically, but because they can harm mentally, so that those people are breaking the third precept. If my partner, spouse, broke the third precept, what can I think about him or her from the Buddhist point of view? I'm not looking for a legal answer, just a Buddhist answer. So when there is a chance someone in your relationship is to break the third precept, what are you going to do? Well, we always have a spiritual way of looking at it. I can't say one answer for that, because it depends on how serious the situation is. But there's definitely way of talking this over, at the same time having a discussion. I mean, this is kind of a legally related thing, but definitely there's a chance of discussing and doing things for the next step. If you cannot, then that's a different thing. Is emotional relationship a breach of the third precept? Let me see. Women tend not to cheat unless they are in unhappy marriages. They often use the emotional relationship they develop with their affair partner to substitute what they do not have with their spouse. A man may bond with a woman who is not his wife over interests his wife doesn't share. Or he may bond with her because she allows him to play a role he cannot with his wife. The example of a man who began an affair with a co-worker in an unhappy marriage, who had grown up poor. Their relationship gave him an opportunity to act on his white knight inclinations, taking for her for nice meals and supporting her in ways her husband would not. Okay, now this means chances, opportunities where a couple can cheat in different ways. So that's why I'm telling you one thing: choose your partner according to some spiritual teachings, right? You have to look at whether you are equal in Saddha, Sila, Chagapanya, trust, morality, virtue, and wisdom, right? So not just the physical perspective. You have to look at the both perspective, physical and emotional perspective, right? So now emotional has the spiritual part too. So if you look at someone to become to make as your partner, you have to look at these four. Then I'm gonna ask you to look at how you're gonna maintain physical as well as emotional, right? If you only look at physical aspect, if you ignore the emotional aspect, there is a chance of someone is going to cheat on you, which is not necessary, right? That's why don't ask me a question, what can I do when someone is cheating? Better ask yourself, did I really look at these four? At the same time, did I do my responsibilities? There are other things when that happens. Do vulnerabilities of partners make a big deal? Should we address if that happens to my life? Okay, so what are the vulnerabilities that a couple may have in terms of adultery? There are people who are vulnerable because of different things, right? So if you are a partner, if you are a person in a relationship, if you are not addressing each other's vulnerabilities, there will be a problem. So these are the causes of someone can be into adultery. How to become a faithful spouse partner? Okay, that's a very good question. Okay, you can be a faithful, loyal partner by keeping to those four elements of your life: Saddha, Sila, Chagapanya. You have to practice Saddha, what you call trust, Sila, virtue, generosity, and then wisdom. Because if you practice these four, you will never think that there is someone who is more important than the person I'm with, I'm dating, or I'm engaged with, or I'm married to. You always look at there is a bigger framework that I put my spouse into, my partner into. So you won't be unfaithful then. Okay, so that's everything. Now let me see the questions under the comments. So if you have a question, please post your comment, your questions under comments here. Can kami sumichachara also refer to don't abuse? Yes, I also said that at the beginning, because kami sumichachara, kami su. So there's no one karma, so which means karma is relevant to what do you call rupa, saddha, gandha, rasa, pottabha, dhamma. Means karma is related to images, sounds, then what do you call smell, taste, touch, and thoughts. So there are multiple karmas. So physical, what do you call sexual intercourse could be activity, could be just the touch and the body, right? So, but there are multiple things involved. So not even one karma. So when you practice the third precept, you have to look at the bigger, larger version of the precept. So it can extend to other karmas too. Let me see other questions. If you have a question, please post your question in the comments. Let's see. And I want to say that I was trying to be very careful, because this is kind of a legal, based, at the same time very sensitive topic. I was trying to talk this topic in a very careful manner. In Sri Lanka, I know that there are people when their children ask, parents, mom, dad, what's the meaning of the third precept? They say, skip the third precept, go to the fourth one. Because there's a cultural taboo, about talking about this thing. I mean, if you don't talk about it, people never understand in the proper way, right? So that's why I'm trying to say that we have to understand, we have to spread the word across. It's not a question, what is the best to do for not breaking the precept? Okay, that's a very good question. The first thing is that we look at what benefit other people can enjoy. That's the first thing, because if we are practicing the second precept, how come we're going to break the third precept? Because adultery, if it is adultery in the main form, then that means you are trying to steal someone's wife, someone's husband, someone's partner. That means stealing. So if you can reflect upon why I should not take what's not given to me, then that means you are having a good reason for why you are not supposed to breach the precept. Now, why we are not supposed to take what's not given? Because we respect other people. Yes. Now, in the second precept, we respect what other people have. In the third precept, we respect other people's families. If you don't respect other people's families, your family may be broken in the next life. I mean, of course, we never expect that. If you need to have a peaceful family, never ever think about ruining others' families, even though the people are interested in you, right? So that is the main reason why we should not. Okay, looks like there are no other questions, I guess. See, if there are no more other questions, let's wrap this up by sharing good karmas with the departed relatives and the deities. May all the good karmas be shared by all the departed relatives who have passed away in the name of all of us. May they be happy and peaceful. May they attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Idammi nyati nang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. Idammi nyati nang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. Idammi nyati nang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. Now we're going to share all the good karmas with the deities, devas and nagas who protect all of us. May all the good karmas be shared by all the deities, devas and nagas and higher beings. May they be happy and peaceful. May they attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Ettavata cha ammihi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti sindhya akasatha chummatha deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkang tulukasasana chirang rakkang tudesana chirang rakkang tumang paranti. Finally, let's make a great wish. This is the wish we've been having for forever, all the time. May all the good karmas we've been accumulating so far be helpful for all of us to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I'm gonna bless you with a couple more stanzas. Please receive the blessings. Abhivadana silis nichang vaddha prachayino chattaro dhamma vaddhanti Ayuvanno sukhang balang ayurarogya sampatti sagga sampatti mevacha ato nibbana sampatti iminati saminjatu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Now, folks, we'll be discussing the fourth precept, not lying, next Monday. In the meantime, I want to tell you there may be some interviews going on. Please stay tuned with us. Thank you. Take care. Have a good night. Have a good day. Please continue to take care of yourself.